Make you one promise. Your children will never know how this ended.
Hey guys, this is Scott, Bad News and Shoes, and I'm in a different room. I want to take a moment real quick to do a vlog on a new horror movie that I just saw. It's on demand right now. It's called The ABCs of Death. It's a horror anthology. Horror anthologies are some of my favorite movies. You know, of course, we have the classics like Creepshow. But you have more recent examples, like there was the movie came out a couple years ago called Little Deaths. There was Trapped Ashes, which was not very good. And then, of course, last year we had VHS, which I'm actually a huge fan of VHS. And a lot of people who are involved in VHS through circumstance are probably just coincidence, are involved in this movie too. Apparently, the setup to this movie, the premise of this movie is some producers out there had this idea of sending out letters to various horror and genre directors through the world and gave them a letter and said, like, come up with some word that starts with this letter and then create a story, a short, about death, so, about that word. And so the whole alphabet, there's 26 of these segments, so it's actually quite a long movie. It's about 2 hours long. It doesn't feel that long. A lot of people complain about the length of VHS, but VHS is only about 112 minutes, which is the average length of a film nowadays. The average length of a film is about 110 minutes nowadays. So it really wasn't that long of a film. It's just that VHS is a very bad flow. The wraparound segments are terrible in that film. They're dull. They don't go anywhere. The resolution is overall completely pointless, and the wraparounds in that movie are just, they shouldn't have been there. And we're back. The wraparound segments, they shouldn't have been there. Again, VHS was a good movie, but because of those wraparound segments, and because a lot of the segments throughout that film, they had a lot of samey qualities, and they were just kind of uneven. A lot of them were mostly just set up, and then like a little bloop of everyone getting killed at the end. And of course, there was the Skype conversation in a movie called VHS, that the movie has a very sluggish, almost kind of broken pacing that makes that film feel a lot longer than it actually is. This film, on the other hand, has a 130-minute runtime. It's a long movie. That is, of course, there's about 15 minutes of credits, and I do sit through credits. I'm one of those people. But I guess I'm not going to go into every single segment, but a lot of these segments are actually worth mentioning. Overall, the movie is quite good. It has a lot of flaws. It has a lot of the similar flaws that VHS does, oddly enough. A lot of the segments are samey. They even feel like they're using the same locations. A lot of the segments actually feel like they might have been planned. And what I mean by that is that the producers were like, here's your letter and here's your word. And it's like, because a lot of them just have that similar feeling, and I can kind of think that, like, with VHS, it was all the same writers and all the same producers on all of that thing. So maybe because those writers didn't have a lot of imagination or something, that a lot of those segments turned out to be pretty similar. With this movie, it's strange that, like, a director from Japan, and these are films from seemingly all over the world. A lot of different directors of a lot of different origins from a lot of different countries, but it's odd when a story that comes from Japan has a lot of the same similarities from a story that comes from, like, Mexico, and then like America, and maybe like something in from like the UK, because there's a lot of oddly enough, there's a lot of like toilet and scatological humor throughout this movie, which I was not expecting from a movie called the ABCs of Death. I was expecting a lot of modern gore, a lot of unexplained segments, a lot of unexplained shit going on, because that's kind of what was happening in VHS a lot. A lot of things were just... And you're just like, okay. Overall, the best part about VHS is that overall, as an experience, it's a good experience. If you really look at that movie with a harsh critical eye and break it down, it has severe problems. But with this movie, there's only a couple segments where I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? There was one, the G segment was a guy surfing, but like nothing made sense in it. Like, I guess his surfboard hit him in the head and he died and drowned. I don't know. It was from his POV, and a few segments, a bunch of the segments are actually from POV too. There's a couple found footage segments. I actually thought there would have been more for it. There's only like 3 or 4. A lot of cartoony ones, a lot of over the top ones. A lot of them are some form of animation. There's one that actually, one of the best ones is I made a list. On the top of my list of the good segments is H for hydroelectric diffusion. And it's basically furries in World War II. It's a Nazi cat and a British soldier, a dog. He's like an air pilot, and it becomes a Warner Brothers cartoon, and it has like a joke towards, you know, keep calm and carry on and all. It's a lot of British sense of humor. I liked that one a lot. There's J was also a good segment. I don't remember the name. It had a name that was in Japanese, but it's a guy was performing Harry Carey he's performing Harry Carey, and the guy who is supposed to cut off his head is just looking at his face of pain, and it keeps, you know, cutting between the two, and every time it goes back to the person performing suicide, his face gets more cartoony and it gets more ridiculous, and the guy with the sword who's supposed to cut off his head, he's trying to keep a straight face, and it's a very much a comedy segment, horror comedy segment, and it's really, really funny. It's really, really effective. I really liked it. There was Q for Quack, which it was a segment by Adam Wingard, I think is how you say his name. I'm not a huge fan of him. He did A Horrible Way to Die, I think that's what it's called. I fucking hate that movie and everything about it. It is a good example of modern indie horror that's too far up its own ass to get that it's too far up its own ass. Plus it has that horrible, you know, this type of whoa type of camera movement. And of course, you know, there's something in the foreground, like lights or something, so everything is all out of focus and just like this the entire time. Kind of like Die Hard 5, which I actually didn't mention in the Die Hard review, and I should have. The camera work in that movie was fucking awful as well. Another thing against it, but that actually, he stars in it, Adam Wingard, and he kind of won me over throughout that. It's a self-referential piece about, like, they're not sure what to do for their segment of the ABCs of Death, and there's actually another segment that's like that way after that it's the W segment, that it's just, at that point it felt like, okay, fuck you, like, because Quack does it really, really well, because they want to do something totally different with theirs, so they decide to actually have a real death in theirs, so they decide to kill a duck. They decide to shoot a duck. It's him and his writer, co-producer, whatever. And so they go out to the desert to shoot this duck, and they get too nervous, and they end up shooting each other. And I thought it was really clever. And he was pretty funny in it. And his personality kind of won me over, if that is really him playing himself. Hopefully it is. A lot of those directors that did VHS were also in that movie. The last segment, which might be the best segment. The first segment and the last segment of VHS are the best, but the last segment was the directing, I don't know, group conglomerate of these 5 dudes called Radio Silence, and they were all the stars of it. What else was there? There was S for Speed, which S for Speed, which was kind of this kind of, I don't know, Road Warrior meets like Warlock, or like kind of like a monster movie like that in the desert, and it turns out to be like a death dream of this girl who just overdosed on heroin, or speed. S for Speed. S is for speed, I should say. They're all is for, not for. It's not. It's an affront to Alan Moore, I tell you. But yeah, that one I really liked. Yeah, that one I thought was really good. And I actually kind of got it partway through, because they kept making, in this chase scene, this girl, like, she's kidnapped someone. This girl has kidnapped another girl and put her in the trunk. And she's like, "You junkie bitch, you cunt, blah, blah, blah." And so I was like, oh, junkie, S, what could that mean? And I kind of thought, well, maybe it's speed of some kind. And that's the thing, is a lot of them, they don't tell you the title until it's over. So a lot of them, I'm trying to guess what the title is during it. You know, I'm trying to see the major theme. And a lot of them actually kind of clever in their names and what they do. Again, S, you know, Q for quack, you know, and S for speed. It's a chase as well as an allegory for an overdose on drugs. You know, pretty clever. There's U for Unearth, which was a POV from a not a zombie. I thought it was a zombie at first. It was a POV from a vampire, and that was directed by Ben Wheatley, I think is how you say his name. He did Kill List, and Kill List is a fantastic film if you haven't seen it. It's poised to take The Wicker Man's place as like the great seminal, you know, North UK horror movie, or like it's just in line with that. It's fucking amazing, Kill List. It also has this very, very funny undercurrent to everything that's going on, and the ending is fucking incredibly disturbing. The whole movie is incredibly disturbing, but it has that funny kind of undercurrent to all of it, kind of like in an I Saw the Devil kind of way. Because I've seen I Saw the Devil a bunch of times now. I love that film as well. It's very brutal, it's very unrelenting, and it's very disturbing and graphic, but it has this funny kind of underpinning to everything. That you can laugh at, like, this situation where, like, he picks up the serial killer picks up the other 2 serial killers, and they end up having a knife fight in a car while he's driving it. And it's like, it has that 360-degree shot, and all the blood is going everywhere in the car, and it's super graphic at the same time, and the guy still keeps one hand on the wheel, and he's still driving it. It's just like, this is funny, as well as incredibly over the top and disturbing, you know, and graphic. But Kill List, I Saw the Devil, they kind of have the same feeling. If you're, see Ben Wheatley films. Yeah, Wheatley. See Ben Wheatley films. They're great. He has a new one that just came out a couple months ago. I don't know when it's going to be out or available in America, called Sightseers, which apparently is a straight up comedy that turns into a horror movie, which I'm very interested in seeing. There was V for Vigatus, I think is how you say it, or Vagatus. It was weird. It was a... it's not that weird. There are some of this that are really weird, but Vagatus was a modern... Not a modern, but it's like RoboCop mixed with a post-apocalyptic kind of Judge Dredd feel, kind of, which, you know, if you know anything about RoboCop, originally RoboCop started as the first, it was originally a first draft for a Judge Dredd movie that got changed into RoboCop, that became RoboCop when Ed Neumeyer got his hands on it. Yeah, it's basically like this post-apocalyptic RoboCop kind of thing with these psychics and telekinesis and this great prophet, and I'm just like, it's like Looper in that regard. It's with the, what the fuck did they call him? The Rainmaker, which was a very cliched name for a Rian Johnson film, I'm just saying. But that's one of the things I didn't like about Looper. When I do my Looper review, which I plan on doing, there's a handful of things I don't like about that movie, but I love that movie. But yeah, it felt like it had that Rainmaker subplot going on with like RoboCop, which it's fun, you know, it was good. And then the last one that I want to mention that was in the good pile is Y for Young Buck, which is about a janitor at a school taking out one of the students hunting. They kill a deer, and then he sexually molests the student, and then the student later comes back and kills him with the head of the deer that they killed. So it's kind of a revenge film. It was good. And that's one of the things about this segment is, and a lot of these segments, is it had no dialogue. A lot of these segments have no dialogue. They're all done with music or, you know, sound. It's pure cinema. One of those that is definitely worth mentioning is O for Orgasm. It's basically a woman being raped to death, but it's done with all these really cool, interesting visuals. That has a lot to do with bubbles and a cigarette that's burning. A lot of really close-ups on body parts and stuff. The lips especially. That's worth... It's not... It has no real emphasis on like a story, a lot of those segments, but that segment's really cool. Oh, for Orgasm. Another cool, really short segment is M for Miscarriage, which was done by T. West. If you've seen any of T. West's films, I really like T. West. It's kind of why it's worth mentioning, is it's a T. West segment. 1 second. I had to close a window. But T. West, he did... I'm a really big fan of T. West. I mean, I like his segment in VHS. I kind of put the first two segments in that movie, the bro dudes with the succubus and the haunted house sacrifice one. I kind of put those on the same level. Oh, the sound changed, but the same level of goodness in that movie, and then T. West is like second behind those. His segment, Second Honeymoon, but his segment Miscarriage in this movie, it's really good. It's really T. West feeling. See The Innkeepers. That is a masterpiece of a film. I'm not a huge fan of House of the Devil. My reaction to House of the Devil is kind of like, okay, it's good, and you know, it's kind of one of those and movies where you're just like, it's good, but what else? You know, you want more out of it. But not in a good way, where you want more out of it because it's good. It's like you want more out of it because you didn't think there was enough, but you thought what was there was at least good. That's kind of my reaction towards it. In Cabin Fever 2, that's a travesty of a film. That's one of those movies that, were I a fighting man, were I a bit more brash, I would review very, very bad movies that I couldn't stand, and that would be on the pulpit. But I'm never going to do that type of movie. There's a very strange one. There's a couple very strange Japanese ones. Or Asian ones, I should say, because I don't want to be specific that they all came from Japan and that painting Japan as a bad, weird place. This one specifically was from Japan. F for fart. Yes, F is for fart. Excuse me. F is for fart. I don't even want to talk about it. It's so fucking stupid. It's basically like this girl farts and that awakens God, and God starts farting on the earth, I guess, and it starts killing everyone, but then her teacher starts farting, and her teacher has this like magical fart that saves the world, and then they both get sucked into, her and the teacher both get sucked into the teacher's own ass, and then they're just like there farting together and they're happy. And that's the whole fucking segment. It's like, what was that? Why does that exist? What does that have to do with death? And then another fucked up one was L for Libido, which basically was these. It reminded me of that movie. Oh, what the fuck was it called? 13. The Russian roulette movie. Not the remake, but the original. I think it's called 13. Where, you know, it's rich people watching these two guys jack off really fast to these, like, hot girls, and they go through all these stages, and the person who doesn't come first gets this giant spike through their body, and they die. So the guy keeps... So one of the guys, like, he's winning, and he gets to round 11, and that's when it starts getting really fucked up, and they have to jack off to this girl who is, like, an amputee, and is masturbating with her stump. And then they have to jack off to a dude fucking a little kid, and the guy can't do it, but his competitor does it. And so then I don't know what we're up to, round 14, whatever, is the guy is getting fucked by this kind of actually rather attractive Asian girl, and she pulls out a chainsaw and then cuts him to death, and that's it. And it's like, okay, it was kind of neat, it had a story, but at the same time it's like, it's fucked up content. Now we're gonna start getting into the like, worth mentioning bad segments. This one isn't terrible. A few of these aren't terrible. I'm gonna start with the less terrible one. If I want to start with the least terrible one, I guess we're gonna start with K for klutz and T for toilet. They are both about poo, and the dangers of poo, and the dangers of toilets, and the dangers of how they can kill you. And they felt very similar. And if some of these really bad segments weren't in this movie, and I mean some of these are offensive on some levels, and I don't mean offensive on, oh, that's gross. I mean, like, some of these, like, oh, you know, like, it's, like, let's not ever put that in a film. You'll know what I mean when I get to it. But, again, they're both animated, which was interesting, which is good, I guess. One, T for toilet was claymation, and I was kind of hoping, like, it's very, very bloody and graphic, and I wanted it to be live action, because I wanted to see that done with practical effects, because I'm a bit of a gore hound at times. If you're going to do it, basically my philosophy is if you're going to do a gory scene, if it's going to be gory, then it might as well be very gory. You know? If you're gonna do gore, it should be pretty gory. But, you know, I don't go into a film, I don't go in for just gore. But I kind of wanted that segment to be live action for the gore. And then, yeah, Klutz is about killer poo. It's animated, I don't know. It reminded me of some animation style, but I can't remember right now. But both of those are kind of on the level. There's R for removed, which is just kind of confusing. Basically, these two, like, suave motherfuckers are having these surgeons cut strips of film out of people's skin, or out of this one dude's skin, and he wakes up during one of the operations and he turns out to be, like, the Hulk, and he cuts a bullet out of his own skin, and he kills everyone, basically. He kills the suave guys, he kills the surgeons, and then he goes to a train yard and pushes a train, and then it starts raining blood, and that's the end of the segment. And I was like, what did I just watch? What is this? And now we're gonna get into... Okay, then another one that isn't so good was W for what the fuck. It was basically, it's the same thing as Q for quack. They're like, what do we do for our segment? Blah, blah, blah. And basically it has this whole thing about, like, the imagination making all these horrible things actually happen. And it's alright. I don't know. It's not as confusing as some of them on here. Some of the ones I'm not even mentioning are really, really confusing and really, really weird and really, really shitty. Actually, the few first like 4 or 5 segments of this movie actually weren't that good, and I was kind of afraid that it was all going to be shitty. Because again, there was like, I thought Trapped Ashes was going to be good when I started it, because it had kind of the same concept going on. And then it turned out to be terrible. There's all the modern anthologies that are actually happening right now that are pretty terrible. Like Little Deaths was pretty bad. The middle one of Little Deaths with the giant dicks and the radioactive, addictive super sperm that's keeping the guy alive or something. That had some cool elements, and that was just like, that was close enough to fucked up without being whoa fucked up, that like actually being like turn your stomach, like disturbing fucked up, that it was good. You know, it was interesting. But these are really bad, these two that I'm about to mention. First there's I for Ingrown, which I thought it was going to be I for Injection, because it's a guy injecting this girl with some awful chemical, and basically you're watching her slowly die, and the whole thing was very cruel, I thought, and the whole thing was just not fun to watch. Next, and this one I guess is when the movie, this one, there was no lead up to it at all, and that's kind of the thing, that I thought it was very, this is very exploitative, and if you're an animal person, animal activist, animal rights person, this might push your buttons. Basically, I don't know what was going on in it. Low income family, some kind. The girl, who's not very old herself, she's probably like an older 20s girl, you know, raising her brothers and sisters, and she goes out one night all dressed up to this abandoned, like under a bridge somewhere, this abandoned place under a bridge somewhere, and this guy is there with a tripod and a camera, and you're like, alright, and she has a kitten, and you're like, alright, and then you see that she has high heels, and you're like, oh no, and then they put the kitten on the ground, and then it turns into a crushing video. And fortunately, they don't show anything, but yeah, that's getting there, you know? I just thought that was very cruel. I just thought, I get the whole economic hardship will lead a person to do anything, you know, that was going on in Magic Mike. You know, there's a movie that does it better, and there's a movie that does it without going into an exploitative subject matter. What the fuck? Crushing videos? I mean, come on now. That's ridiculous. That's puerile. Let's not do that in a film. Let's not do that ever. But overall, I would say see this movie. It's worth watching. If you can sit for 2 hours and deal with it and get through those fucking terrible segments. The first segment I thought was really bad. It was really stupid. It was stupid and clever at the same time. It's kind of hard to describe. And it was kind of, well, I don't know. It was alright. It compared to the really bad ones, the first couple were okay, but again, if you can get, like, when the movie starts, you'll probably think the first few are pretty bad, but once it starts getting into it, and once it starts getting into the better ones, and the more cartoony ones, and the ones that kind of go crazy with it, and they're more ridiculous than they are, you know, horror shorts. They're more just ridiculous short stories. Once you get into those, it gets better. Yeah, see it if you want. See it if you don't want. Hey guys, after this I'm going to be watching the Jeffrey Dahmer Files and Would You Rather, so watch out for those vlogs. House of Cards review coming soon once I finish the series. Dawn review will be out, or maybe it's possibly out right now. Go watch it. See you guys later.